Good morning once again. Today's lesson I call The Healing at Bethesda. And during the introduction, I mentioned that we draw from and honor all paths. And so I think we've all known that wisdom is everywhere in all traditions and we grab from all over the place. And today is one example, actually, because the healing at Bethesda, of course, comes from Scripture. And the other inspiration for this talk is this book by medical doctor Lisa Rankin called Mind Over Medicine, Scientific Proof that You Can Heal Yourself. So last week I mentioned that one of my objectives here at Unity Georgetown has been for us to develop a really cohesive group consciousness, one that is reflective of the leading edge thinking on the planet. And an open mind and an open heart is required, essential for this. Fortunately, we have a group here that is really special. When I came here to Georgetown, I'm very impressed by how forward-thinking everybody here really is. We actually make a very good match. It works out quite well. And this bonding has been, to a great degree, the result of the outside groups we have. The Let's Get Metaphysical, Alice's Book Club, the Friday night dinner group, and even the potlucks. All have been integral in me helping to get to know you all better. And so to further aid in this process of cohesion, an idea came to me, and that is that to implement some of the outside group material that we cover and bring it into Sunday. In other words, to share what the smaller groups do with the bigger groups. And in that sense, the smaller groups and the bigger groups kind of integrate a little bit more. And this is especially important when it really comes to big ideas. And this week at Let's Get Metaphysical, we had an example of such a big idea. And the idea is healing. We shared a TED Talk from this lady here that she calls, Is There Scientific Proof the Mind Can Heal the Body? By Lisa Rankin, MD. The topic is particularly relevant because Unity began as a healing ministry. That's how it began. And the healing I'm talking about is not about going someone to be healed. I'm talking about self-healing, based on the idea that we are endowed by nature with this ability. It is who we are, that the human body is an amazing organism capable of self-repair. From its very inception, this was based on this very idea. Unity co-founder Myrtle Fillmore, as you may know, was diagnosed with tuberculosis in her 40s. This is the 1800s. A diagnosis of tuberculosis is essentially a death sentence at the time. But during that same time, there was this rise of this new movement that was going on, which came to be known as New Thought. And as a result, that New Thought was a blending, a coming together of Eastern and Western religions, transcendentalism, science, and the power of the mind. The power of the mind. And I'm not referring to our thinking mind, our thinking brain. I'm talking about that larger consciousness that dwells within us. There's a line in Scripture that I've always liked, and it says, For he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. And the way it's written, it says, For he, capital H, who is in the world is greater than he, lower H, who is in the world. I love that line. I think it speaks to me of the idea that we talk about in Unity, that life begins from the inside and outside. That the inner consciousness is the cause of the outer condition. So for Myrtle, it started one evening when she attended a lecture on this New Thought movement, and she heard a message there that night. It said, I am a child of God, and I do not inherit illness. Myrtle, it's like something blew up in her head. She had a transformation. She said, wow. And she took that to heart. She was a very, very deeply spiritual person and a devout Christian. She was a Methodist. And somehow she intuitively made the connection that Jesus' healing power was based on this quote, unquote, new fundamental healing power that was being promoted by this new thought movement, that there is really something in us that is greater than that which is apparent. And another idea, that if one person can do it, then everybody can do it, because we're all the same. And that's something unique to New Thought and unity. And we know that in the Gospels, there's many instances of healings. And almost always, Jesus attributes the healing to the person's beliefs. He says, "Be it done to you as you believe. Your faith has healed you." He never says, "I did it." And this further convinced Myrtle about this indwelling power. She literally talked to her mom. She went into her closet in the darkness, and she would talk to her body for hours on end, to every cell. And she would say, "Forgive me for my ignorance, for not knowing what it is that dwells in me." And she did it over and over and over for months until the outer condition changed. She was a determined woman. She lived to be 80, 88, I don't know, somewhere around there. And one of the things that we read recently also talked about, sometimes a facilitator can be very helpful in healing. Now, that's not to say you don't have the power. It's just to say that sometimes we talked a little bit about that on Wednesday, about somebody who encourages you, who just has the ability to say, "You can do this." Sometimes that's all it takes. And I've heard it said that when you come across somebody who is in their journey so far along that they just alter the entire room. The Dalai Lama, I understand, is one of these people who walks in the room and you know it. You just know it. And I'm sure Jesus was the same way. And I think it's exemplified in this passage, and that's why I chose it in the Bethesda passage. This is what it says. It says, "Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters. For the angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. And whenever that happened, the first one who got in the water was healed of whatever affliction they had. And then there was a man there who had been there for 38 years, and Jesus saw him lying there. And he knew he had been there for a long time. And he asked him, 'Do you wish to get well?' And the sick man answered, 'Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool, because every time the angel comes down and stirs up the water, somebody else beats me to getting into the water.' And Jesus said to him, 'Get up, pick up your pallet, and walk.' Immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet and began to walk." Oh. So that's an example of somebody just saying, just do it. You have that power in you. Do it. So it's always about the fundamental underlying idea of belief that, and those of you who know Greg Braden, he says the belief is absolutely essential in the process. Without it, it's not going to work. If you don't believe it, you are part. Remember, I keep talking about we are a participatory universe, that it goes back and forth. And if you're not a participant in the process, it's just not going to work. So that's why it's so important. And Jesus told us that if we had a little bit of a faith, a little bit of belief of this, that we could move a mountain. And I keep thinking, do we believe these things? That we could move a mountain? And I think we just don't realize it hasn't set in just exactly who it is that we are. That we are sons of the Most High, children of God. That he who is within is greater than he who is in the world. These are crazy, phenomenal concepts, empowering concepts. But I think we fail to really fully grasp them yet. Though, I'll give us credit, we are working on it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. And so that's important. And for me, I'm fascinated by the natural world. I'm fascinated by everything. Spiritual world, natural world. To me, it's all the same thing. And I love to understand how things work. And I think that's probably, those of you who don't know me, I'm a philosophy major, and that's part of my curiosity about wanting to know, how do things work? While I was searching the other day, this is a little off the thing, but anyway. While I was searching for a TED Talk the other day, I came across this video, and the guy was talking about how does electricity flow through a wire, a current? And I said, I don't know. So I started watching it, and he says we all have the conception that that electricity flows through the wire, something like water might flow through a water hose, and it actually moves. He said, it doesn't do that at all. It doesn't do that at all. It's the fluctuation that's happening there that creates the power. And so anyway, that's neither here nor there. The idea is that I'm fascinated by how things work, and we have a very little understanding of how things work. But now we know that healing is a big deal. The power that we have within is a big deal. And last week I talked about the reconciliation of science and religion. Again, for the same thing, I think everything is one. And without even intending to, this week's lesson is really kind of like a continuation of that. And because medicine is finally coming to terms with spiritual practices, ancient, mystical, spiritual practices. They are becoming one. Medical healing is blending in with spiritual healing. We call it holistic medicine. And such is the video that we saw this week. And I invite you to watch it. It's 18 minutes long, but it's very, very interesting. And you'll find a lot of the subject matter very familiar, because we in Unity talk a lot about these things. We're kind of ahead of the game in that sense. This whole positive movement and mindfulness and everything that's happening these days it was initiated to a great degree by the Unity movement, by the New Thought movement. And so the video begins by, she asks the question, as a physician, she says, I am doubtful. I need science. That's what she said. Is there scientific proof? That's where she started from. And she mentioned some things that Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about in the biology of beliefs, which I did a lecture on as well. And she talks about the placebo effect, which is a big deal. About that they give you miraculous healings as a result of being told that you're giving this miraculous medicine, and they give you a saline solution, and you're miraculously healed. And then what he calls the nocebo effect, where you can be told that something is going to happen to you by someone in authority, and you believe it such that you manifest it. And it's very strange. So she talks about the importance of doctors. And recently, we've gone through some things recently, as you know, and it keeps coming up. The powers that the doctors have. And she talks about the importance of the nurturing effect of the doctor, that the doctor himself or herself can be that placebo to you. What they tell you goes a long ways into what you believe and whether you're ultimately healed and things like that. So again, in Wednesday, we talked about this. Someone brought it up, and we came, don't relinquish your medical power to a doctor whose beliefs don't match yours. Find another doctor. We talked about that. So it's very important. And the really, really big important thing she brings up is about stress. So many of us are subjected to stress all the time. And it is the source. Now they know that stress is a source of a lot of the illnesses, a lot of them. And Dr. Lipton also talks about this. He talks about when we go into this fight or flight mode that is part of the nature, because you need to run away, like she says, from the mountain lion. But it also creates this influx of stress hormones into your body. And the whole idea is it's very natural, but it's intended to be short-lived. As soon as you get away from the lion, your body relaxes again. But the situation is that a lot of people are under stress all the time. And this keeps you in this mode where you're continuously creating stress hormones. That is not a good deal. So she talks about the relaxation response. And that is like practicing meditation. And last week or week before, we talked about the 1 minute that you can do a little 1 minute meditation throughout the course, and not just once. You can do it anytime you're feeling a little stressed out or whatever. Remember we said pause, breathe, notice what's going on, and then just give thanks. And that 1 minute, that simple exercise, changes the whole response. Your body begins to produce the positive hormones that you need to keep you healthy. And so you can do this continuously. So imagine, and I've talked about this in the introduction, that we come together on Sunday mornings for the sake of creating the sacred space where we are, and I want you to visualize this all the time, that you are being inundated by positive healing hormones, endorphins or whatever, and whatever else is involved, all the time while you're here. You're just in that flow because you're in that state of consciousness where you're receptive, as Therese said, receptive to those ideas. She says that being part of a spiritual community will literally add years to your life. She says a lot of things. She has a website on this concept that she created called the Whole Health Karen. A stack of rocks, as Liz says. And so I just want to share a couple of little ideas about that with you. Yeah, there it is. She says, my intention was to create a blog that explored all the facets of what I believed led to a healthy life. Relationships, work-life purpose, creativity, spirituality, sexuality, your environment, finances, mental health, and physical health. And she says, I think the most interesting is all the new ideas that have been presented have always come from the point of view that the body is the foundation, and then we built upon that. She says, no, it's the opposite. The body is the most fragile. That's why it's on the top of this carom. And so she emphasizes how really, truly important the relationship between all of these are. And like I said, she has you can go to a website, and she talks about it. I printed it. Here it is. The Whole Health Karen, a radical new wellness model. And she talks about all that's lacking from the other models. She says the other models aren't complete. When she saw the normal health models that everybody has, they weren't expansive enough. They weren't comprehensive enough. There was a lot missing for her. And so she created this one. And you know, at the very bottom, she shows our inner pilot light at the very foundation. And what would that be? He who is within, right? That indwelling Christ, as we say, indwelling presence. That's what the devout foundation of everything. So I believe I would add one more to this, and that is a veto power to change everything through the power of our beliefs. We can alter everything. But you can see how all of this is so totally unity sounding. It really is. So do we have the power to heal ourselves? Mystics and unity have always said, yes, we do. But now science is beginning to get on board with that whole process and says, yes, we do. So I want to take a couple of moments right now just to enter into this state of healing awareness. And just remember that we have that power within all the time. So we begin anytime you're stressed out by just pausing and changing our focus to that which is within, to the spirit. We can always take a few deep, relaxing breaths and contemplate upon this infinite mystery that we call life and its natural and powerful healing ability. We envision this perfect life-giving force traveling throughout our entire body, as Myrtle did, healing and comforting all that it touches, all that we are, covering us like a blanket of healing energy. And as we do this, the body naturally follows our mind and begins the healing process and the process of relaxing us. We allow ourselves to simply be in this healing state for as long as we want. And we can do this over and over at any time during the day. And so we come here to learn all these spiritual practices because we know that we are already spiritual beings. And our eternity is granted because we live in eternity. What we want to do is improve our human experience. And all these practices, this is what they serve to do to us. And once we get ready to return to the time and space, we know that we are recharged, and we know that these simple little exercises can go a long way towards keeping us grounded in our natural state of health. And always, always, we give thanks, and we say amen, and so it is. The power of healing. So, today, we have something special. It's called special music. It just kind of happened last night out of nowhere because we were at the potluck, and Therese says, do you know that tomorrow is, today, is John Lennon's birthday? I said, I did not know that. And she said, if we had thought ahead, we could have had Dan sing Imagine. And I said, well, I mean, I can text Dan right now. Last night, I said, Dan, do you know this song? Yes, I do. I said, would you play it for us, please? Yes, I will.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you, John Lennon, for your gifts that you left us. We appreciate them a lot.